much for coming out tonight. I greatly appreciate it. Tonight is going to be a fantastic session. We've got great knowledge up here. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Just in case you don't know who I am, I'm Dr. Jim Anderson. I'm the chairman of the IEEE West Coast PACE section, and I'm the guy who's hosting tonight's meeting. So once again, thank you so much for coming. The purpose of tonight's meeting is really to help you out. So it's not about us, it's not about me. This tonight is truly about you. So I've been an engineer for, like about 25 years at this particular point in time. And so I've seen how things go, right? So if you're a good engineer, you work on a project, hopefully the project does well, the company's pleased with your performance, and so what do? They punish you. Eventually they punish you by promoting you and make you a manager. Most firms that I've worked for don't really have any formal manager training programs. I think there's some fantastic companies out there like General Electric and stuff like that that take care and they bring people along and they mentor. I have not worked for any of those companies. Okay? What happens, bam, one day you're a regular engineer, individual contributor as we like to say. The next day, bam, you're a manager, which is generally a good thing, right? More money, more prestige, all that sort of stuff like that. Maybe they won't fire you quite as easily, whatever. But anyway, so, and by the way, we all sort of aspire to this, right? Because it's like a milestone in our career. If you become a manager, then clearly you're doing good things. The company has high aspirations for you. But you don't really know how to make that jump, necessarily, from being an individual contributor to now being sort of like chief cat herder, right? You've got a bunch of people who are basically just like you, that now, all of a sudden, you want them to do what you're telling them to do, and the question is, what should you really be telling them to do? I mean, how many times have you seen an engineer manager who, as we like to say very, very nicely, is hands-on? Here, I'll do that, right? And we all have that feeling because the concept is it's a lot easier for me to actually do the work than for me to tell you how to do it. All right, so these are all challenges. Tonight, I can't say we're going to solve it. Okay, that'd be promising too much. But what we're going to do is we're going to deal with it. Okay? We're going to give you some of the training that for whatever reason has been missing from your career. We have the experts with us tonight. Fantastic, that's wonderful. They're going to share some of their insights. I wanted to start things off tonight by having a real quick talk with you about what a manager actually is. Now, so a manager, that job is about this wide, as far as things that you'd have to do on a given day. But I think if you wanted to, you could actually break it down into basically 8 major types of activities that a manager does. And I am generalizing a little bit here. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. But if we had to break down, it'd go down to budgeting, managing your career. You guys are doing that right now, right? Whether or not you're a manager, okay, well, whatever. Okay. Innovation, leadership, management, staffing, team building, and technology. And the trick with being a good engineering manager, quite unfortunately, is it's not that you're good at 2 of these, or even that you're good at half of them, but arguably you have to be good at all of them. And the other sad thing, I guess, is that you don't go in and go, well, Wednesday's my budgeting day. Excellent. Today I'm just doing budgeting, okay, right? And Thursday's going to be team building. You can't compartmentalize it like that. Each one of your days is like a mix of what's going on, a casserole, if you will. And so it's a bit of a challenge. This is not an easy thing, and yeah, it really should be some training that goes along with it. So let's just talk about these very quickly at a very high level, just to sort of get the juices flowing, so to speak, shall we? So right off the bat, budgeting. Oh, God. So, you guys work in organizations. You understand the fuel that goes into the tank is money, right? As much money as your team has, to a certain extent, that determines how much your team is going to be able to do. Where does the money come from? It's your manager. It's the engineering manager who puts in a request for funding at the beginning of the year. And if they're a really good guesser, and also if they have the ability to work the system, you'll get the money that you actually need. Okay? The tricks with doing budgeting, it requires a vocabulary that we as engineers traditionally don't really have, right? Bottom line, top line, capital costs, operational costs, OPEX, CAPEX, all these sorts of terms that traditionally, I've been through a lot of engineering courses and we've discussed none of that stuff. The math is not that hard. the vocabulary and some of the goofy accounting things that they do is really strange. So it's not hard, it's just a new experience, and you have to understand how it goes. By the way, every company does budgets differently. So if you master the budgeting process at one company, congratulations, you go to another company, they do it completely different. All right? And it's very company specific. Your career. So you manage your career probably somewhat today, but in all honesty, when you're an individual contributor, you sort of do good work, right? You do good work, you hope that your boss notices that you do good work, and it's sort of your boss's responsibility to promote you as you go along. And then one magical day, you become a manager. Well, there's not necessarily that same boss who's watching you when you're a manager. Now you're more competing with all these other managers, right? And that's a pool of talents, and suddenly they'll come along and promote somebody to be a director or an executive director, whatever the heck the next step is in your company. But there's nobody who's really watching out for you once you become a manager. It's really, you're managing yourself, your career. So you gotta be careful. It's all about relationships, right? Whose good side are you on? Whose bad side are you on? How's their career going? All that sort of stuff like that. And if you ever needed a mentor, this is probably the time in your career that you do, because it's brand new for you. There's a lot of challenges and stuff like that. You got to see how it goes. All right. Innovation. We're engineers. Of course, it's all about innovation, right? Well, innovation has an awful lot to do with making do with what you have, right? You do not have unlimited resources. You do not have unlimited people. You do not have unlimited time. And yet the company's asking you to do very specific, potentially very challenging things. How are you going to get it done? Well, congratulations, there's some innovation for you. Now, the other thing is when you're a manager, it's not all about you, is it? You're in charge of a team of highly qualified and skilled engineers. So really, when it comes to innovation, from a managerial point of view, it's how are you going to get your team to be innovative? To instead of throwing up their hands and going, shh, that can't be done. That's just, we don't have to do that. Don't have budget, don't have time, we don't know how to do that. How do you get them to sit back and put their thinking hats on and go, oh, hey, here's something we could try, or I read something, and maybe we could do it this way. How do you get them to have their creative juices flowing? Ultimately, you're the one who's going to have to sort of be pushing them to go ahead and do that. And not easy to do individually to be creative, but now as a manager, you somehow have to bring out that creative spark in everybody that's in your team on Wednesday. Congratulations. All right. Leadership. So here's the trick with leadership. So leadership is not management. So management is because the company put you in a manager's position. Great. That gives you a certain amount of authority. People who work for a manager have to do what the manager tells them to do. Otherwise, potentially, the manager could fire them. That's sort of the rules of the game, okay? Leadership is completely different. Leadership is getting people to do things because they believe in you, right? Not necessarily because they work for you, but because they share your vision, they share what you want to do, they share where you want to go. Leadership is a heck of a lot more powerful than management. Yeah, you're my manager, I'll do whatever you want. Of course, you're my manager. If you're my leader, I'm going to spend time thinking about how I can achieve that goal that you've put out there for me. I'm always going to be thinking about it. I'm always going to be trying to strive to do it. Even when you're not in the room, I'm going to be trying to achieve the thing that we've agreed that we're going to achieve. If you're my manager, I'm going to be trying to achieve that thing as long as you're in the room. When you're out of there, I got web surfing to do or something like that, whatever. Okay. All right. The interesting thing about leadership is you're not always put in charge. You might be on a part of a group of managers who have a responsibility. You might have some sort of shared responsibility, or you might actually be helping somebody else out. You might not be in the #1 position, and yet you still have an opportunity to do leadership there. How do you show leadership when you're not running the show? We all laugh about visions. Oh God, there comes the company vision. We're going to do that. Hey, look, I got a little card. It's got the company vision on it. Fantastic. I'll put it right here, so if anybody asks me, I can take it out and tell them what to... we laugh about it, but the concept of the vision is actually a good idea. There's no question about that. It's just, when you're a leader, an engineering manager, do you have to come up with a vision? And how are you going to make it so that your vision is something that your team buys into, as opposed to laughing and putting on a card and sticking it in their pocket and moving it out when somebody asks them what it is? And oh, by the way, when does leadership really show up? Well, when there's a crisis, right? when everything hits the fan, that's when you really see the leaders. The managers will hunker down and say, well, okay, let's make sure we don't get in trouble. The leaders will actually step up and say, let's fix this problem. So you've got to prepare for the next crisis. All right, management. Now, management is all those thousands of annoying little tasks that a manager has to do, right? We've made you a manager. That means there's these things you have to do. Year-end performance evaluations. You have to do feedback to your team. You have to, sign time cards. Just all the crap that has to be done, okay? The trick to being a good manager is it's all about listening, right? You got to listen to what your team's telling you. You have to give them feedback on what's going on. You have the authority. Yes, the company gave you the authority because they made you a manager. The question is how do you use that authority effectively? How do you handle team conflicts? I was recently in charge of a team. 2 lovely ladies on the team, fabulous, good contributors. They hated each other. Flat out hated each other. And so I spent so much time on the phone with one who was complaining about the other, and then I get a call from the other who was complaining about the other. It's like, oh my God, can we just not get along here, people? And then, of course, feedback, right? How can the people on your team become any better unless you give them feedback on what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and how they need to change? Great stuff. I think this is motherhood and apple pie. I think we can agree on this. It's just, where do you find the time? On top of all that budgeting and leadership and innovation stuff. Oh, by the way, could you, not become the best friend necessarily of everybody who's on your team, but certainly become an ear that they can talk into and somebody will give them feedback. Staffing. Oh my God. All right, so you have a team. Of course, if you're a bad manager, you won't have a team for long, will you? If it's an up economy, there's jobs elsewhere, those people are taken off, right? So you have a staffing issue as a manager. You have a certain number of people that you have funding for. You would like to keep them, number one. If the company hits a bad time, it's going to be time to jettison some of them. If you got some people who aren't carrying their own weight, it might be time to fire some people. Has anyone ever taught you how to fire people? Okay. So here's an interesting thing. A fired employee doesn't die, generally speaking, doesn't go away. That person is going to go on and go to other companies, and that person is going to talk about your company, right? They're going to talk about you too. So if they're going to often talk about the company, you really want them to say positive things, even though you fired them, right? So when you're firing them, you don't really want to make them angry, because it doesn't. Could you screw up a sales deal if you've got a bunch of employees who are saying bad things about the company out there? Yeah, you certainly could. So go away, but don't go away angry. Is sort of the trick there. Well, good luck with that one. Bad apples. Every team is going to have some high performers. We like to talk about high performers, but there's always going to be a couple of not really carrying their own weight folks, right? Maybe people who don't get along. Maybe people who are just not doing their job at all. Great. Manager, that's your responsibility. Fix that problem, would you? And do it quickly. By the way, if it's the boss's son, you're not going to be fired. All right, and then you got to keep the staff that you have, right? So even if everything's going great, if everyone's doing well, if it's a good economy and there's somebody else in town who's paying more, you're going to lose your team if you're not careful. So you have to make your team the place where everybody wants to work. Good luck with that. All right, team building. As engineers, we push back on this one. That seems sort of huggy-feely, doesn't it? What are we going to do? Like climb the rope or something like that? Okay, you fall back and we'll catch you unless we've got something else going on, right? It's like, the team building stuff is actually really important, right? Because that's how you keep people to stay on your team. You get them to interact with each other. You get them to talk to each other. Engineers, we don't like to talk to people, right? You do some team building, maybe you force people to talk and share ideas and get that innovation stuff going. Oh, God, how do you do it? And then there's the concept of, what is it, millennials? What that's kids born, after 1980 or something like that. And they're tweeting and Facebooking and Twittering, and their mom and dad raised them as a single child and said they could do no wrong, and they got trophies for just showing up and all that. Oh my God, these people are on your team now, and you have to manage them, and you have to tell them they're not doing a good job. They're going to break down and cry in your office right there. You got to turn an engineer into a team player. As engineers, we do a great job by ourselves. I'm good at what I do. I do not need the team. I'm here. Tell me what to do. I will do it. Well, I need you to work as part of a team. No. And why? Because I'm better, quicker, faster than all these other guys. Don't slow me down by making me have to work with these people. Well, congratulations. All right. And then competitive arousal. it's basically competition. You know, every team has it, right? So people who are all trying to be number one, and as they do that, they're sort of sabotaging each other. Right? It's like Survivor Island with some people like, you know, hiding stuff under that. Technology, we've all got technology. Yay, we're engineers. We love that stuff. Well, technology is both a help and a hindrance to the manager. That cloud thing, who knows what the hell that is, but it's coming, right? So we got new applications floating around, you know, new ways of doing all sorts of crap and stuff like that. Data, we got more data coming than we know what to do with, right? Your Six Sigma, your Lean Six Sigma, here's your performance metrics for your team. What the heck are you supposed to do with all that stuff? Let alone collect it. Security breaches, oh my God. You know, because your team, folks in your team can walk out the door, right? And if they've got one of those really cool flash drives, like the 64 gig flash drive, they can take the whole damn company with them, right? Oh, great. As a manager, you're supposed to prevent that from happening. Oh, good luck with that. And then, you know, open source and free software. And oh, by the way, what did they install on their laptop? what does that actually? Well, I don't think that's really appropriate. Oh God. All right. Fabulous. So that's just the 8 things that go on. Oh my God. So being a manager is not an easy task. It is something I think that we all sort of shoot for, you know, because Mom said that we were supposed to become managers. Thank you very much. But when we achieve it, you know, it's one of those things that you might want to be really careful what you ask for. So tonight, our whole purpose here is to go ahead and talk about some of the issues that have to do with this. Now, I've got some questions. I'm going to be asking our panel members my questions. But I want you to be thinking about the questions that you have, okay? Because that's actually what's really important. We're going to get stuff going. We're going to get some discussions going here. If, as part of our discussions here, we say something that captures your attention, that brings a question up, I want you to raise your hand, and let's talk about it right then, okay? Because we've all had workplace experiences, and maybe it's going to add a little bit of insight. Now remember, if you're not a manager now, you will probably become a manager in the future. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that you're ready for it when it comes. And congratulations, I've got some managers here who are going to be willing to give you a little bit of insight on it. That sound like a good way to spend a little bit of time? All right. So let's talk about our panel tonight. So our panel tonight, sitting at the far end, we have Paul Stevenson, pardon me. And Paul, you're with
Cormac Stevenson Corporation,
which is a company that does what, sir?
We do product development, primarily defense aerospace related. So we're a mechanical engineering consulting firm.
Excellent, very good. Sitting next to Paul is Serge. Serge, you work, coincidentally, it turns out you don't actually work for Duke Energy, unlike what I told everybody. Well, congratulations. You've switched recently, haven't you? You're now at...
That was 4 years ago.
Time changes, time changes. You work for...
Lakeland Electric.
And you do what for them, sir?
I'm the manager of substation operation, basically maintaining, constructing all substation, electrical substation.
Excellent, very good. Sitting next to Serge is Tom McCann. Now, Tom, you work for
CAE.
And that, if I recall correctly, is that a Canadian flight simulator company,
Yes.
sir? That's how I... What do you do for them, sir?
I am the manager of the instructor operator stations. So we're the software that all the instructors sit at inside the simulator to control all the systems.
So these are the instructors?
Yes.
So they get to see sort of like the big picture.
Right, and we got the software that they use.
Pull it up. Okay, gotcha. Excellent. And sitting on the end here is Chris. Chris, can you tell me who you work for, sir?
Yeah, I work for Trek Microwave.
Excellent. And what do you do for them, sir?
Test engineer manager digital.
Gotcha. Excellent. Fantastic. So we've got a great team of 4 people. You can see they're all from different companies. And they've all had different experiences to get where they're at. So I think we're going to have a great opportunity to sort of get a 360-degree view of some of the challenges that come along with being a manager. And that's what we want to do tonight. We want to share that with you. So we're going to start with my very first question. I'm going to ask it to Paul right off the bat, and then we're going to go stepping down the line. So we're going to give everybody a chance to share their feedback on it. So Paul, I'm going to pose a question for you, sir. Let's go with this one. So as a manager, you're responsible for getting a team of engineers to work together to produce something. Many of these projects could take a considerable amount of time. How do you use goals? Do you set them only at the beginning of the year? Does your company have a goal tracking system? And do you review goals with your team?
Okay. I guess a little background just to let you know where I'm coming from on this panel. We're a small business and we're a consulting firm, so work on projects for our clients are typically defining the project goals. So that doesn't mean that we don't have company goals, but when we look at down at the project level, usually our goals are driven by our client. We might have some input into the schedule in which we meet those goals, but typically the goal is driven by the client. But from a company standpoint, certainly we have revenue goals that we set every year. We use financial models to set up our goals for the year, kind of determine what do we want to do this year, what do we want to spend our capital money on. So we do a lot of budgeting earlier in the year. We set up these financial models. We also have profit sharing in our company. So we set our profit sharing goal. What are we going to share with our employees if we're successful this year? So the way we track those goals is we meet as a management ownership team quarterly to discuss our goals, to fine-tune that model based on reality. Like with any model, things change as the year goes on. You project a certain revenue for the first quarter, and maybe you meet that, maybe you don't, maybe you exceed it. So suddenly your goals have changed for the year. So we get together as a management team to review those goals, see what we want to do differently, how we adjust the model, and then we also get together with our employees quarterly to discuss with them exactly how we're doing against our financial goals, how we're doing. What they really want to know is how we're doing against the profit sharing goals. And of course, everyone wants to know that. We want to know that as owners. We want to know that we're going to make a profit. So we meet with them quarterly. We tell them what we're doing to adjust to hopefully meet that goal again in the second quarter. So that's kind of how we establish goals for our firm and how we share that with our clients and how we do the metrics of it.
Wow. So I've worked for Verizon for a good 10 years. So Paul, that's fantastic. I love the fact that you have quarterly meetings. You're constantly basically revising your goals as you go through the year. Because I can tell you at Verizon, we set them and then we don't touch them. Right? At the beginning of the year, we set our goals, and don't you mess with those goals. We'll talk at the end of the year on how you did on it, and that's it. And I think that might be sort of a difference between a massive company, perhaps, and a smaller company, which has more of a focused eye on its overall profits.
We're much closer to the edge.
I think your activities are indicating that. Serge, so how does goals, what kind of impact does goals have on your team? Are you setting them, or does somebody else set them for you?
The way we set up the goals, we have the company goals. We call them Key to Success Implication. And we meet as well quarterly on those goals, and your team has a part in that goal. So when they set up those goals at the beginning of the year, and you see what part your team has to play with that, and you kind of meet on a monthly basis to see where you are with those goals. It can be like a construction, like a project, time management, safety, reliability, and we're trying to play a role in that. So it's basically we're trying to have your team play their role in the entire company goals. And the company, the management of the company meet quarterly and to go over the goals and see where you're at. And at the end of the year, we see if you meet the goals or not.
Wow. Okay. Once again, it's sort of an island. That's fantastic. Tom, CAE.
Yes.
What's the story on goals? Do you guys do anything with goals, or is it just like whatever? Just
No, we
say
do
something.
something with goals. We use a software package called Workday.
Oh, okay.
And so all the engineers go in and we have goals that are flowed down. So from upper management, they'll pass down goals. And then we also work on leadership attributes and individual project goals. So when we win a simulator job, I assign an engineer to it, and that becomes their goal to deliver on time and on budget with that simulator. So we do it semi-annually, so every 6 months. We're about to start our mid-year reviews right now.
And the software plays an important role in sort of how people are making progress on their goals. Do they update it with their progress, or does
Yes, we can. Usually, formally, we do it every 6 months. We can update the goals, because if a project is completed and they get a new goal or they change, we do it formally within the tool every 6 months.
Excellent. Because the tool is really important. So as far as
That software, what was the name of it again?
Workday? Workday?
Workday.
Yeah, that's the name of the software package.
And does it basically do a stoplight analysis?
What we do is you go in and the engineers pick their own goals of things they want to do, like if they want to learn a certain task or a certain feature. And then we also put in goals for the projects that we're working on. We assign engineers to say to deliver this trainer and to this customer. And then we put in the leadership attributes, because we like to grow each engineer to become managers eventually. So we try to skill them on the budget stuff so that when they get that position, they'll be ready for it.
excellent. Now we all have a love-hate relationship with all software work. Okay?
Yes.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being wow, this is very software invented, 1 being man, they can take it out of here tomorrow, I would never ever miss it and stuff like that. where would you say your relationship with Workday is? Just to sort of give us a feel for.
I'll say about a 7.
Okay, well, that's not bad. We can't, you really can't ask for more, trust me. I spent some time with them twos, so I'm very sensitive to that. Excellent. Chris, sir, we come to you, sir. Goals. Is it something set in year, or is it dynamic? Is it always changing? Or do you even think about goals as you go through everything? Excellent. Very good.
At Track, we have financial goals for the company and stuff, right? But it's a defense contractor. So our contracts come in and go out during the year. So the company goals are usually set once a year, annually, right, and stuff. But for the team, we try to take so there's some overall goals, personal development goals, different skill sets that they might want to learn and stuff. But there's also project-specific goals. So at the beginning of our year, we'll sit down and go through with the employees about project-specific goals. But those can change and do change during the year depending on which contracts come in and what they'll be working on with those different contracts and stuff. It's a smaller company, so actually I work side by side with my group. So it's pretty much it's a dynamic thing that we can change on the fly. There's no setup like once a month or once a quarter or anything else. You know, we're talking
Day by day,
so,
almost,
yeah,
right?
You can be.
Gotcha. Now, do you have like a formal end of the year progress review or evaluation of the employees?
We do.
Okay, and do goals play a role in that? You know, in other words, hey, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that it is part of the overall discussion.
Yeah, it is and stuff. So we don't have a nice fancy tool like we have an
Excel.
Yes, we do. We have an Excel spreadsheet that we write the stuff out there and stuff. And on that there's two different forms. There's one for the more general skill sets of leadership, technical skills, those types of things. And there's a second one that's project stuff, right?
Okay.
So each of those goals are listed there, and they're break down on a certain 1 to 10 thing. Well, nice little math problem, some stuff.
And I'm sure it's quite complicated because we're all engineers. 2% from your performance goal. All right, guys, so we're done with my goals question. Are there any questions? You guys all have goals wherever you're working, right? You know, you got evaluation criteria for how you're going to be evaluated this year. Any questions about the role that goals play when and if you become a manager? You don't have to have one. I just want to float the idea. I've seen there's a question that's coming to the surface.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of phrase it. 4 different views on goals. And so I'm trying to sort of understand what's actually successful, or is it kind of random? I mean, it just fits the company. I mean,
Well, you ask an interesting question that I guess I actually didn't ask. So here's the concept. So you all have goals, and it's all part of your managerial responsibility. Real, sort of a general question. Do you feel that goals help? Okay, because they're there. I mean, they're part of the infrastructure and stuff like that. Does it help you be a manager that the people who are working for you are within this goal framework of either the company or their personal development goal? Do they actually use the goals? Are they aware of the goals? Does it help them keep on track? Or is there a better way of doing all this?
I think from a utility company, those goals, they are critical because you're getting feedback from the customer. If you have a goal about reliability, you know, outages and things like that, you need to really focus on that, have your system ready, you know, so you don't have any outages. You know, the maintenance has to be done, you know, if you have to do any upgrade, those need to happen because otherwise you're gonna have more outages than your goal dictate, then you're gonna hear from the customers.
You know, so Sarah brings up an interesting point. As a manager, you can't always be there, right? You know, in fact, you won't always be there. But I guess if each employee has their own set of goals, when you're not physically there telling them what to do, in theory, they're working on their goals. The things, you know, either the company's goals or their personal goals. So if you're not there, they should be doing activities that contribute to their goals. So maybe the goals are sort of like the manager who isn't there, right? You know what I mean? I don't know. That's one way to think about it. I don't know if that works or not, but
Yeah, but basically each
how do you know what to
team,
do?
you know, play part of that goal because it's such a big system, you know, and different tasks can impact the goal. So, and you know, you have to play your part, and you know who's not playing their part.
Gotcha.
I think it also helps for people, as engineers, software engineers especially, I think we want to grow. We don't want to stay stale, we want to learn new technology, so the goals allows people to, you know, pick things they want to focus on.
I want to be databases. I want to be language. Okay.
What's interesting.
All right. So my next question is a little bit of a floater, because we've all had different experiences and stuff like that, so I don't want to pencil anybody in here. But we don't always get a chance to hire the people who are on our engineering team. But when we do get a chance, picking the right people can be critical to our career success, because our team determines how good we do. My question is, tell me about a time when you, this is the important part, or another manager, okay, chose the wrong person for the job, and maybe one time when the right person was chosen for the job, and how could you tell? Does anybody have any horror stories of the wrong person being selected?
I don't have a horror story for necessarily the wrong person. It's like, I mean, not from a bad person's point of view,
Okay.
but you can tell, because if you give a task to somebody and it's not getting done, or not done to your expectations, then things just don't happen. And it becomes kind of, depending on the task, it becomes quite obvious quite quickly, right, and stuff. And I think as a manager, I think the thing that you tend to forget, though, is that as opposed to circuits and what you're designing, right? If I go pick some out of a data sheet, I know exactly what I got.
Right.
And I know that if I buy 10 of these guys, I'm going to get the same 10 things, right? But people are different, and there's different skill sets, and there's different ways to utilize them. And I came across this saying, we always talk about hiring and firing people, well, get the right people on the bus, right? Get the wrong people off of it.
Right.
But then I came across another one that said, it's not only important to get the right people on the bus, but also get the right people on the right seat in the bus,
That's
right?
the point.
And so I think if you take somebody and you put them in the wrong seat, it can become quite obvious. And yet, if you can find a different task for them, or even a lot of times it's just miscommunication where they didn't understand what the task was too, right? You can actually take the same people, and if you juggle what they're doing, the whole team can be much more successful and stuff from that point.
That's a good point. Now, Tom, you work in a very technical environment, right? I mean, it's computer programming, it's computer systems, and then it's programming on top of it. Have you ever had a situation where somebody showed up who you thought had a set of skills, and then for whatever reason, it turns out they really didn't have that? I mean, I'm thinking that would be something.
Yes, I have. And similar to what you said, it becomes apparent pretty quick when the tasks are not getting done.
Gotcha.
So, you sit down and talk to them and try to figure out if it is miscommunication or something like that. But I did have an incident at another company, not CA, where, that is the truth, it's not another manager.
That's all good. Doesn't matter. It's all good.
But an engineer, things just weren't getting done. I would
Okay.
check with them, I would have them show me demos and stuff with software. And come to find out, HR got involved, and we had, when you went to this company that I worked at, you gave your transcript from your school, or your entry level employee, and they asked the school for a transcript themselves, and the transcript had been modified. So they
Modified?
Yeah,
Oh
they
my
had-
God, okay.
The employee had turned in a modified transcript, so that was probably the worst horror story I had, so they were immediately involved.
Gotcha, okay.
And from my perspective, a lot of time, that person might be technically competent, but it's not, when you're managing a team, you're not only looking at that, you're looking at personality, how that person fit into a team. Because you might have a very functional team, and you just bring one more person, technically capable to do the job, but all the interaction, all kind of start changing.
Poison, right?
That's exactly right, and that can be worse than having somebody that's not technically fit, or you can basically coach them and get them to the next level. I think personality is a lot harder to change, and I think that's something that's very critical when you're hiring, is that personality, how that person fits your team.
Gotcha.
That's a great point, Serge. As a micro business, if Track is a small business, we're a micro. As a micro business, we hire 1 or 2 people a year. So it's critical that we get the right person for our staff. And that is very rarely the right technical person. That's someone that meshes with our team. So we never place an ad in the St. Pete Times or Tampa Bay Times and then sort through 100 resumes and interview and hire someone. That's not how we go about our hiring process. We network, we meet people at things like this, we meet people at USF. I'm active in the student section there. So we try and identify people that we just know on a personal level, get to know them a little bit, find out where they're at in their career. Are they in transition? Are they working somewhere? Can we possibly lure them to our company? And so we identify people that way as opposed opposed to just going through resumes. I'm not sure you can get an accurate read on someone's ability to gel with your team in a 2-hour interview and a resume. So we really avoid that. When we get in trouble, it's because we have a sudden peak in our manpower needs, and we've got to go out and find someone to start tomorrow. So we make a business decision based on availability rather than what we really want to make the decision on. So we've ended up with a couple bad apples that way, where we hired someone because they were available, they could start tomorrow, and they just really didn't fit in. So hire slow, fire fast.
So, Paul actually brings up a really important point that, you may not realize. When you're an individual contributor, the day starts at 8 o'clock and the day ends at 5 o'clock. You sort of shut off until the next day starts. But Paul brings up the fact that, even when his day's over, he's doing all this stuff with the students at USF, and he's out networking and stuff like that. And he's doing it because he knows he's going to have to hire people at some point in time, so he has to go out and socially meet these people so he can identify possible, so his job's not over, right? So he's got this, I'm not sure how you explain that at home to the missus, but anyway, he's out basically, he's doing things that aren't necessarily work-related, but there's this little background sort of work-related thing where he's evaluating all the people that he meets to figure out if maybe they'd be a good candidate to come work for him. Damn, the job never ends. Right? So that's actually sort of an insight there, that as you become a manager, suddenly the demands on your time start to stretch, obviously, beyond necessarily the workout. That's actually a fascinating thing. Thank you very much for sharing. All right, let's go on to my next question here. Okay, so when the U.S. economy is booming, engineers can start to think that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. As an engineering manager, it's your job to keep your team together to make sure that they don't leave the company. What steps have you taken in the past where it looked like one of your team members might be thinking about jumping the ship? And Serge, I'm going to start with you, because you're in actually a very competitive market. The energy generation business, just in the area, there's 4 companies that do the same stuff. And by the way, Serge, you've worked for all those companies, haven't you? Okay,
no,
so you might be a candidate for jumping ship here. But so you want to keep your team of very, very trained experts. It's pain in the ass. They leave, right? Do you do anything special to try to keep them paid them, give them chocolate?
Honestly, the way I see that, I think you need to treat your employee fairly, starting with, if an employee reaches a point where he has to go somewhere else to make more money, I think, that's just my philosophy. I'm gonna let them make that decision, because my perception when you do that, the next time is gonna be, all right, I need more money and I'm ready to go. I think if you come and say, okay, this is the situation, this is what I'm producing for the team, and I think I deserve more money, that's a different thing. But if you go out and find an offer and say, okay, this is my offer, can you match it? I say, I wish you the best of luck. And that's just my philosophy. And other people react differently, because I need somebody to be vested, and I think there's nothing wrong to want more money and state that. And we're going to try to find a way to give you the money that you think you deserve. But the fact that you have to go out and get an offer and say, match it, for me, I think, I wish you good luck.
There we go. Now, Tom, you work for a fairly large company, then the people that you have on board have those software skills, which unfortunately are quite transferable.
Yes.
Right? I
Yes,
work
they
for
are.
you, or do the same job down the street and stuff like that. Do you do anything special to keep folks on your team, trying to set up an environment, or?
Yeah, what I've learned is a lot of times for software engineers, the thing that keeps them motivated, keeps them wanting to stay, is leading edge technology. And I know sometimes it's a double-edged sword, like you said. You can train somebody in the leading edge and they can go somewhere. But if you foster that atmosphere as I'm going to train you as a leading edge, you may go somewhere and they're not. They may want to stay with your team. So I attack it from that point. And also on the other side is I believe in kind of trying to fostering traditions. One thing that happens, like in your family life when you're growing up, Thanksgiving, you're always looking forward to different things. So we try to do things that are like that. Every other Thursday is Donuts Day. So I bring in donuts every other Thursday. It is religious. Everybody knows that's what's going to happen on Thursday, and people are waiting for it.
People leave on Friday. Go figure what the story is on that. It's just really strange. Nobody on Thursday.
And we do it the non-paid week. So
Okay.
you got pay
Oh,
week,
okay.
and you pay every other week.
No money, but have a donut.
I like to every 3 months take the team out for lunch.
Oh,
So,
wow, okay.
so we have those traditions. Everybody knows that's coming, and then the team votes on where we want to go. So those kind of traditions, along with the eating lunch day.
How big is your team?
My team is 12 people.
Well, that's a crowd. I mean, that's a couple of tables at a restaurant.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's not.
And we've also developed, I've learned just with going out to lunch, everybody gives me their orders beforehand.
Oh,
And
wow.
I go to the restaurant and turn it into the waiters and waitresses,
They love
and that
you.
way people are not out from work for that hour and a half that they come in. Sometimes it can be a long time.
And I think
People-
you can do that easily when you have a team of 12. When you have a team of 32, it's a lot
Hey,
harder.
it's a little- yeah, that- you gotta
You
get a
have to break
restaurant.
those lunches up. Rent the restaurant.
All right, how many donuts?
But
did
that's
that
a good
actually-
idea, though.
So now here's an interesting question, because people do leave, and we know that that occurs. But, hey, the leavers, us engineers and stuff like that, we will make jumps, but we also make bad decisions sometimes when we jump. And shortly after we made the jump, we go, oh, dang, I should not have done that. Do you do anything to keep the door open?
Yes. We just had an engineer on our team quit last week, and she just unquit.
There's a face-saving thing that has to go on in that, and other things.
Yeah, her husband lives in another town, and she was trying to get closer to him, so there was understanding about that. But she had an interview and verbally offered one thing, and when she got the letter, it was totally different.
Oh, wow.
So she tried to call and clarify, and she wasn't getting an answer, so she came to talk to me, and I'm like, absolutely, yes, you do that. So you help us out, and so yes, and I keep in touch a lot of times with the people who have left. I get in touch with them, we email, we talk about what they're doing. So yeah, I become friends really with the teams as much as possible. And so yeah,
And
it helps.
that's a good statement. So a lot of times people that leave, they don't leave sometimes for financial reason.
Yeah.
They might leave because the type of job they're doing, and I've experienced that as well. Sometimes I leave companies because I don't want to do that anymore. Let me try something else. And other companies give you that opportunity to do that.
And CAE also offers you to go to other groups too.
Okay,
So you can leave our instructor operations systems group and go to another group to do avionics. So rather than lose a good employee, they'll let them go and be like a project engineer or program manager. So they foster that type of stuff.
And so as a manager, I guess ultimately it's sort of your responsibility as best you can to keep the person within the company. Even if they leave your team, you get manager credits. If they say, well, I don't think you actually get a credit, sorry, but ideally the company would like you to retain them because they vetted them, they know that they're a good performer, they don't have to give them a badge number.
Exactly.
All right, so that's cool. All right. So Paul, I'm going to start with you on this one. Okay. So as engineers, we all believe that we're the best person to do any job, right? Because we're the smartest, brightest, awesome. Mom always said we were the best person to do the job. That's why delegating a task is so very, very hard to do. So Paul, tell me about how you delegated when you first became an engineering manager and how that's different from how you delegate things today. Right off the bat, Paul, were you like a power delegator? You were like, not a problem, here, I'm just pushing it off.
Absolutely not. I was the dump and run. So I'd walk over to the individual's desk, I'd say, hey, I need you to work on this, I'd give them some information. We'd talk about it for about 5 minutes, I'd leave, expecting everything to be done perfectly.
So show it up with like a bow on it on my desk in like a week.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. Check in a week later, is that done? And I was always disappointed, always, 100%. So, and that wasn't the employees, that was my fault, because I didn't go through a delegation process. So I guess it was about 5 years ago now, I went through a Dale Carnegie course, leadership training for managers, which I highly recommend. And I learned a delegation process through that course, and it's outstanding. I mean, basically, it's there's 5 steps: preparation, planning, discussion, audit, and appreciation. And I won't get into the details of that, but it's really about communication throughout the entire process. And it's also about giving the individual you're delegating to a picture of the end goal, but not telling them the path to take to get there. You really don't care the path. You want to give them a goal to meet and then let them determine the path. So you follow up with them shortly thereafter. That's the planning part. You get together and you say, okay, I've shared the goal with you yesterday. Now what's your plan to get there? Make sure that you kind of buy into that. You know, certainly you don't want them to taking the most circuitous path to get to the goal. You know, you want it to meet your schedule. So you get together with them to discuss that. You discuss the process and then audit. You know, check in with them in a couple days. Check in with them again in a few more days. Don't expect that it's going to show up on the due date and be perfect. You got to follow up. And then when they do a good job, show appreciation for that. They'll be a much more willing delegate next time you approach them at their desk. So, you know, that's kind of the basics of it. But yeah, that dump and run thing, or a lot of just, you know, lack of planning, that'll get you in trouble every time. So,
Yeah, no, I can understand. As an engineer, I think we can all understand the dump and run, right? Look, I explained it to you. I mean, what more? You want me to just do it for you? Come on. How could I have been any clearer in my explanation for it? Now, Chris, you work in a fairly small organization. You're telling me you're working almost sort of side by side with a lot of the folks and stuff like that. Do you delegate?
I do.
Okay, and if you're delegating, you're seeing that person do the work right next to you. Are you able to stay hands off, or are you going like?
It's tough not to micromanage.
I was just saying. Okay.
And and that's a skill that you learn over time, right? So so you have the two extremes. You can either micromanage or you can dump and run, right? And there's got to be a happy medium someplace in between. But as you know, so what Paul was saying. But then as you get to know people, that happy medium changes. And if you're really looking at the big picture and want your whole team to be successful, right? You really need to look at each person individually, right? And some of them need a little bit more checking in, maybe a daily basis and stuff. Some people you can dump something on and walk away for 2 or 3 weeks and come back and miraculously you guys are on the same page and things look really good and stuff, right?
Every person on your team is different, right?
But everybody's different, so it almost becomes an individual thing, right? And actually it kind of goes back to even keeping employees happy, right? You really got to get to know them individually because, you know, there's studies out there that show that once we're paying our bills, we leave for more money because that's what other companies offer us. But we're not really running away to more money. We're running away from something that wasn't quite right, right? And a lot of times it's appreciation, but everybody gets different appreciation. I'm a dad. I got 3 girls, 9, 6, and 2, right? What makes me happy is going to be completely different than a guy right out of college, right? Or a doting grandfather that's at the tail end of their career and stuff, right? And as you get to know the people, you know how better to help them be successful. You also know how better to keep them to be happy as you come to stuff to it.
Very good points all around.
Brings up a point. How do you handle that you're expressing appreciation differently to different members of your team? Right? So one may want a plaque. One may want donuts. One may want
Not donuts, 2 donuts.
2 donuts.
I want 2.
For you, 3 this way.
But now you have a team that you're expressing sort of different modes of appreciation.
Really, it takes getting to know each other, right, and stuff. And I think one of the things that is when I started off on the whole thing, showing appreciation. The downside or the corollary to that is that one person might be appreciated, the other person might say, well, why didn't I get that, right, and stuff. And you know, so one, it's open and honest communication, right? If you didn't do the job, you didn't do the job. There has to be a reason for the appreciation. And the other thing is that when you really get to know the people. And you know what they really appreciate. I think the comparison stuff kind of starts to go out the window because donuts that make one person happy because they got noticed, the other person doesn't care quite as much about it. The other person gets a plaque, and the other guy's like, well, I didn't care about the plaque. I wanted some extra time to go spend time with my girls and stuff, right? So you know, if I know that one of the guys on my team has, you know, a family that's young or something, right? I'll walk out there at 5 o'clock and tell them to go home. And stuff, or if they're going to stay late, I'll make sure that I'm in the lab with them. You know, if there's stuff I can do and run around and stuff, so they don't at least feel abandoned, right? They're appreciated. So sometimes I appreciate them at the end of the job, but sometimes it's just appreciating that they're putting in some extra hours, you know, in the middle of the week to get the job done too, right? And stuff. So, but I think it goes back to getting to know people as an individual and seeing what makes each of them tick, which is a lot of work.
Serge would probably have a pretty tough time with that. Right? We've got a team of 32 people.
I think, you know, I think it's communicating to them you know, that you appreciate what they do. I think that's play a lot. You need to communicate. You need to tell them when they do a good job. And by the same token, a lot of mistake I think a lot of managers do when there's a problem, they kind of ignore it and okay, he's gonna correct himself. I think you have to be on time, communicating when they do a good job, and you have to communicate as well when things doesn't go well, and tell them why. You know, and I think you have to be sincere when you're telling somebody you did a good job. I think you have to be sincere. If somebody difficult from here to here, okay, that's. If he goes above and beyond, you have to make sure. I think he doesn't have to be like donuts or something like that. Just telling them, you know, man, what you did, I really appreciate that, and you're sincere. I think that goes a long way.
So think about your job now. Think about how you spend your day. I'm willing to bet that pretty much your day's taken up with your job, right? You go in, you do stuff, you know, and then the day's over. You go, oh, you know, bam, your plate's full. So what we're hearing from Chris and Serge and everyone else is, oh my God, you have to find out about the people that work for you. You have to figure out that they have 3 kids and probably figure out what the names of the kids are and all that crap. Oh, come on, really? That's where the Excel spreadsheet comes in. Thank you very much. Oh, how is Jenny doing? No, but anyway. But so there's a ton of time that's going into finding out all these personal quirks of the people who are on your team so that you can apparently go out and create almost like an individual management plan for each person on your team. It's not managing a team, as they like to sort of pitch it in management school, but it's managing individuals who collectively make up your team, and it looks like you have to have a specialized management system, scheme, whatever, for each person on your team because they all respond differently, which is cool. I mean, I think we can all, as engineers, we can all understand that. It's just the time required to make this happen. Dear God in heaven, which leads us into our next question. So, Tom, we're going to start with you on this one, my friend. So, sadly, there's only 24 hours in a day and only 7 days in a week, and none of us ever seems to have enough time to get everything that we need to get done. How do you manage your time? Do you use any particular systems, tools, techniques? You've got plenty of hair, so congratulations on that. You're not pulling it out. So you must. What's your secret? What's your secret outside of Hair Club for Men? What is your secret, sir?
What we usually do is there's something called Scrum, Agile Software Development. So we try to, Victor will tell you, I have Post-it notes all over my desk, trying to keep them on a wall on a Kanban board, but actually I have them on my desk. So a lot of our time in our job is fighting fires. There'll be a crisis you never even knew about when you walk in.
Good morning.
Yes. So one thing I found is, I do like a to-do list, and then at the end of the day, when I'm done fighting my fires, I'll try to at least get 1 or 2 of those things done before I leave. So it's kind of an organizational method.
Post-it pads? Are you using lots of post-it pads here? Okay, all right. So that's your secret elixir? All right,
yes.
Let's go. Paul, you've been doing this for a while, right? So we're going to hear from you, the casual voice of experience, that you're going to tell us how you solved. Because you're not solving, you solved the time management problem, right, sir?
Yeah, probably not. I'm going to disappoint you. But, I mean, the tool I use is Microsoft Outlook. It's got tasks, it's got an inbox, and I used to kind of manage my day with my inbox. Big mistake. Learned the hard way that you cannot manage your day with your inbox. So I find myself closing my inbox, ignoring that for periods of time, coming back to it occasionally to check on what's hot. But really what I use is the task manager. So I set up tasks and then I categorize them in 3 categories. Things I have to do today, things that I have to do tomorrow, things that I have to do this week. And then I also have kind of a far-reaching goals type task that is things I need to keep on my radar and hopefully do sometime soon. But so obviously things that I get done today fall off the task list, things that I have to do tomorrow move on to today when tomorrow comes. So I kind of manage it that way, and I use different colored flags in Outlook. So it's not an exact science, but it works for me. And so I think it's just important to have a tool. If it's a handwritten notebook, if it's Outlook, if it's some of the other things, some people use Evernote, whatever it is, you got to have a tool. You can't just wing it. And when you wing it, you get in trouble.
This is true. Sarah, what is your magic elixir for this?
I think I have the same tool with Paul, and I think a lot of time I have those reminders. You know, there's an email, man, I need to answer that, and you just flag it, put a reminder, 4 hours from now or the next day, or else you're gonna forget about it because I put out a lot of fires and I have an open door policy. It's like there's not enough time in the day to
With 32 people, right? Yeah. Okay. I'll do 32 plus everyone else who works at the company that wants a piece of your time, right?
That's correct.
Gotcha. All right, Chris, what's your magic?
Well, I actually use a couple of different things, right? One of them I use Outlook quite a bit and stuff. I use my inbox, and I use my calendar, and I'll move things from my. So my goal is always to keep my inbox at about a page, maybe a little bit more than a screen size, right? And I try to get through those things. So it's kind of like a today's to-do list, right, and stuff. And the things that can wait, I want them out of my mind. I don't want to think about it. So I actually move them to the calendar and put a 0-minute appointment on there to pop up in 2 weeks or something, or whenever I expect to be reminded to follow up on purchase orders or anything like that, right? And then I'll also take around a piece of paper. So usually what I do is I work with everybody else during the day, and I clean up everything after they're gone, right? To try and get some stuff done and everything else. And I'll take pieces of paper around, and I've learned to consolidate my notes. I always have paper in my back pocket, my ESD jacket, something to write something down, because I won't, the worst thing is to forget something and find out it comes back and bites you in a week and stuff.
Post-it notes work.
Yes, I got that in my ESD jacket too, for when somebody's at home, put on their computer screen. And the other thing that I've kind of learned is that Mother Track will always expect me to do something better next year than what I did this year, right? Whether it be technical or management and stuff. So I try to, and it doesn't always work depending on if you're fighting fires or not, but I try to always invest 10% of my time on average during the week into making things better. And I try to remember that it's a business and it's not a theory anymore. So you get up to like budget, different things like that, right? It just has to be good enough today to get the job done, right? I don't have to be perfect for my director of engineering to know what to do with the budget. But I also know that that budget's going to come around again next year. So if I can do enough to answer the mail today and invest a little bit of time into setting up a spreadsheet or whatever, then I don't have to recreate quite as much. Then next year, or the next time that same task comes back around, I've saved 10% of my time the next time it comes around.
Excellent. So Chris let slip around the edges. I don't know if you really picked up on this, but there's a little something. He said at the end of the day, he pulls together all the stuff that happened during the day, right? And I would suspect end of the day, what time of day would end of the day be? Are we talking?
So you want me to tell you after I get home
Just-
tonight
just-
that I
just-
tuck my girls in, I'll
Yeah.
be logging back
So
in?
just doing a little extra. So there's this subtle there, and Tom had also mentioned that he's got all his farm of Post-it pads in front of him. At the end of the day, he's pulling stuff together. So what's coming out of this one is, sort of once again, as an individual contributor, potentially you reach a stopping point, so to speak, the whistle blows, you're out of there, because you come back and you pick it up tomorrow and you go on from there. But what I'm sort of picking up from the managers that we're talking to, they do all this stuff during the day, and then there seems to be a processing that has to occur at some point in time where they take it and they all sort of figure out what they got done and what didn't get done. And the to-do list that was this long at the beginning of the day is now this long, but they have to keep track of all the stuff that still has to be done. So, it's interesting because what's sort of coming out of this is that, when you get that, congratulations, you're a manager, they don't really mention that there's a time commitment that you're signing up for when you take that title. All right, so I've got probably about 5 more minutes of your time, and then we will have probably used up our time here tonight. I got one more question for him, and then after I wrap up that question, I'm going to open it up just to see if we can generate any questions from you guys. So here we go. For some engineers, management is a dirty word. Now, management consists of all those hundreds of little things that you have to do every day, every week, every month to keep your team on track. My question to the panel is going to be, what percentage of your time would you say that you spend weekly on management tasks? How do you remember all the management tasks that you have to do? I'll start with you, sir. If you had to, it's a little tricky, but 100% is the week, just management stuff. If you had to sort of categorize it.
I kind of play a dual role in my company. I play the role of personnel management as engineering manager, but I also play program manager at times. So on the people side, I would say probably 40 to 50% of my week is spent managing our people, either on a project or in other ways. I have quarterly reviews with all of my employees that we do off-site. We get together for breakfast or something like that. I have performance reviews annually that fit in there somewhere. Certainly, I'm always networking, doing things like that. So that's kind of a management role as well. So I would say probably 40 to 50% of my time is on G&A related tasks.
And what does G&A mean?
General administrative.
There we go. Okay, just double checking for everybody. Okay.
So that's a big part of what I do. I would say the other 50% is a combination of program management and or ownership related tasks, since I'm an owner of the firm.
Gotcha. Okay. So, Paul, we're going to sneak a little extra question in here. That sounds very soft. Taking care of all those people. Are you concerned about your technical skills going by the side, or have they gone by the side and you sort of miss them?
Technical skills?
just hardcore engineering stuff, buddy. Is that?
Yeah, no. I mean, certainly, I'm not an individual contributor in that way anymore.
Okay. Okay.
Since becoming a partner in the firm, that's I have a lot of history, and I think I still provide a technical role in a mentoring type way, but certainly I'm not that guy.
You're not cranking out products. Okay. And so congratulations once again. This manager thing, you get to be a manager, but the cost is potentially your technical skill set, right? Because you're not going to have time to keep it up. So Serge, how much time, I have a team of 32. How much time would you say you spend doing just the trivia? I guess the best way to say it, that is being a manager. Time sheets, performance reviews, all that stuff. How much of your time do you wait?
That's a tricky question. I think it varies. I can say 60 to 70%.
Wow. Okay, so really, that's a huge chunk of your time. You're not doing strategic leadership innovations. You're doing day-to-day stuff most of the time.
I do that.
Okay. Wow, what a great job. No, but I think that's huge, though, because he's got a large team, and clearly doing the stuff that you got to do as a manager takes up a big chunk of that's a lot of people. Tom?
I would say about 40% doing the overhead stuff and answering engineering questions. And then, like you were saying, I'm responsible for all the iOSs and all the trainers. So
Gotcha.
program management-wise, I'm trying to make sure everything's on track there. So that's like a
Sort of dual roles?
yeah, another kind of 40%. But it is one of the most difficult things is being a software engineer who loves to code to not be able to do that as much.
Hands off.
Yeah.
Step away from the keyboard.
But I like to keep projects of my own that I do, and I have a tool that I built that I like to do the code for that for all the engineers to use. So that's my coding outlet.
Yeah, no, and I feel Tom's pain here because, man, basically the only coding I've done in like the last 10 years has been like Excel macros. I do a really good job with Excel
I got
macros.
some of those.
They're like, wow, nice Excel macro. Well, yeah, I know, the artist coming in. Chris, how much of your week would you say you spend doing that, the nitty-gritty being a manager?
So I'm going to answer that a little bit differently than stuff. So, because my group is really small, so my percentage is small.
Okay.
So I think it actually ends up scaling more by how big the group is.
Okay.
So I only spend maybe strictly administrative stuff, about maybe half an hour to an hour max a week per employee that I have in my group.
How big is your group?
About 5 plus
Okay.
and stuff. So
2.5 hours or something?
yeah,
like that?
2.5 to 5, depending on if we're in the middle of appraisal time, or if it's just approving time sheets, right, or if somebody didn't have an administrative question, right? But there's also the working with them on the projects and stuff, and things of that sort. So there's a
It's sliding around the edges,
well,
probably.
it does a little bit, and then but kind of like to Paul's point though, and stuff is what I've realized is that as I do this, one of the things that shows me whether I'm doing a good job at it or not, or learning how to delegate or not delegate and stuff, right, is when I can't get the stuff done in a reasonable amount of time. So as my skill set improves, the time commitment, it kind of goes up and down, and at first it is kind of overwhelming and stuff, but as the skill set gets better, it's not quite as bad. And what I've learned is my technical stuff as opposed to being so the way I look at it is as you go levels, right? If you started while you were in college, you're probably just soldering in the lab, right?
Right.
You got a degree, you came out, and now you're doing programming or actual hardware design. So you're like, well, I don't do that anymore, but I'm doing something else in technical, right? So I've kind of moved past that, and now I'm kind of walking around both management-wise, but also technical management-wise, and walking around and giving ideas and stuff, and say, well, we can do this, we can organize it that way, and kind of walking away, and that's where, as opposed to micromanaging somebody, I'm trying to get in and get out and let them do more of the details of everything, but I'm still doing some technical stuff. And in order to know what technical things are the right answers, I still got to stay up with technology and reading and understanding it, even if I'm not hitting the compile button or
And
I'm
Chris,
not.
in your company, there's another layer of management above you, correct?
Well, there's multiple layers and stuff, so I'm
So
definitely in the
eventually,
middle.
you're gonna lose all of this technical stuff, right? If you do a good job, you get promoted up, and then you're just screwed.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that yet.
I feel his love of technology there. All right, so I have probably used up most of the time, but we now have an opportunity. So you've heard our panel, we've discussed a lot of different things. Let me ask you a question. Is there some aspect of being a manager? Your boss came to you today and said, poof, you're a manager. What's the one thing that you would not know how to do? Because these guys probably were in the same situation at some point in time, and they've learned how to do whatever that thing was. What's the one skill that you don't think that you have that if you became a manager would be your number one problem?
Well, that would be an open question I have. Before you became a manager, you were the one doing the work. When you became a manager, what was the biggest surprise that you had no idea about when you were in the trenches?
Probably the earned value, like the budgeting thing, like you were saying, when you were taught at school, I was taught software, the earned value management, and the ETCs and all that stuff. You had to learn about.
So how to create a budget that works within your company, right? And all the vocabulary, that because who knows what the hell the email and all that sort of stuff. And oh, by the way, don't screw it up, otherwise your team's screwed for a year, right? Whoops, they should have learned that. Go get a buddy in the finance department. Actually, probably get another manager, right? Somebody who's in your same shoe who like a year ago got promoted and all of a sudden figured out what the vocabulary was. Don't be a loner.
Yes.
Okay. So once again, if you got promoted tomorrow, what would be your number one challenge? What is the one thing that you think, remember, we went over the 8 different things, what's the one thing that you think you'd struggle with the most? Hiring and firing?
Well, could I respond to his question?
Well, please.
I think leadership. I think that was the biggest surprise, that people look to you for leadership. You're not just a manager. When you're in that role, people expect you to have answers.
That's true.
So when they come to you, they show up at your door, they've got a problem. Almost every time they come to your door, they've got a problem. And we're looking to you as that manager to tell them how to solve that problem. And that's,
I think one of the biggest things you do learn is managers don't know the answers. They're learning something, like when we did technical to build a simulator, the engineer will come to you going, well, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, well, I'm learning it with you. I've never built one like this either.
Exactly.
So
There you go.
that's one misconception of managers is you know all the answers you don't. It's like, you gotta help them through the process and learn it together.
It's funny you bring that up because I've discovered a long time ago that when I'm meeting with vice presidents, I don't want to put them in a situation where we go, listen, we don't know how to do this. What would you recommend? Because it makes the vice president feel very sad.
Yes.
Because once upon a time, they might have been able to answer that question, but that was so long ago. So I only ask them yes or no questions. Hey, this is the problem, this is what we plan on doing, do you approve it? Because they can do yes and they can do no, but they can't come up with, take the green wire and hook it to the red wire and then let's run 12 volts. Or, no, they can't do that anymore, that's not there anymore. So this is, let me ask you guys a real quick question here. When you became a manager, all of a sudden the people started treating you different. Did you notice that? No, so not for you. Everything was pretty cool with you, Tom. Did suddenly you become part of them? You were part of them. Hey, but we're just hanging. No, we're not hanging out anymore. Serge, were you?
I think only one time, in my previous job, because both of us was an engineer, there was a promotion because somebody left, and that guy, it was the two of us applying for the job.
Gotcha. And you
And
got
that
it.
person was, from a level perspective, he was a higher grade engineer than myself. And we both interviewed, and I got the job. Now it's kind of and he didn't take that well, and that was like, that was a quick learning, you know, you're a leader, you have to basically set the ground rule, and, you know, and I think as a manager or as a supervisor, when you have an issue, don't think that issue will go away. As soon as you have an issue, you address it and address it right away. That's the only way you're going to get rid of any situation. Employee problem, you just go right at it.
If you would be personal enough to maybe answer this question, if you evaluate you getting this job for management over the other person, what would you say that it was that set you ahead where they offered you the position and not him? What skill did you have that he didn't?
And I think that's the skill that I had. I had previous managerial experience than him. You know, this is one of the situations, sometimes you move from a position, from a job to another, it's not like because of the money. You know, I was already a supervisor, and I moved there because I said, you know, there's a better opportunity there, and, you know, I can prove my worth and move up. And that was that situation. But that other guy was never in a position where he has to lead people, and I think that's what kind of helped me get that job. But for him, he think, you know, at that time he was in a higher level than myself. But when you interview, you have to bring all your previous experience into play. So I think that's what, but for him, he didn't see it that way. And when you are addressing those issues, you have to do it right away. You know, if you let it, you know, okay, it's going to cool down, you know, no, it's not going to.
Long simmering disputes.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, did they do a good job? So, you know, whenever we have these panel things, we want to reward you for your time. And we could have gotten you a fancy plaque, which you would have gone home and would have done nothing with. We could have printed out some sort of certificate or something like that, which you would have done nothing with. But instead, what we got for them was very large candy bars. So, Paul, could you select one of my very... You get to pick one of my very large...
I'm going to take the only Kit Kat.
There we go, sir. Could I offer you one of the very large candy bars? Anyone of them.
I will do this.
Anyone. See, I know what engineers like. I know what engineers like. Excellent. One more round of applause for them, guys. Thanks for you guys. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I hope you got something out of tonight's activity. Remember, you do have a promotion in your future. It will come. It'll come at the most awkward and inconvenient time, of course, because that's the way this always works. But hopefully you heard from our panel tonight that, remember, there's a lot of subtleties to becoming a manager. And a big part of it turns out to be time. Time management is critical. You've got to understand all the people that work for you. They're not shapeless blobs. They're people. You have to do things to keep them on board. Apparently donuts are important. I mean, that's what I'm taking away from this. I think that's very, very important. Stuff like that. Calling the restaurant ahead when you have, and how you manage 32 people is clearly different than how you manage 12 people. It's different how you manage 5 people, et cetera, et cetera. Oh my God. All right, so just up to, and you know, it actually brings up a very good point though. If somebody comes to you and offers you a manager job, think about it. Yeah, we like the title. We like the prestige that goes along with it. But I think our panel has clearly indicated that there's more than just prestige that goes along with it. There's a great cost with it. So just make sure you're willing to pony up for that, and you'll make an informed decision. Thank you so much. Now, take a handful of cookies before you leave, okay?
And keep in mind, one manager told me one time, when you take those jobs, you make more money, but your hourly rate went down.
That's actually a good point.
My wife.
Yeah, make sure you got a strong